Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and today I get to compare these two really cool Subaru models. This is the 2025 Subaru Forester. It's a premium. This first year of the 6th generation of the Forester, still built in Japan. And over here we have a 2025 Outback Premium. It's obviously in the color Crystal White Pearl. It's built in Lafayette, Indiana, and spoiler alert, if you're new to my channel, I actually own one of each of these. We have a 2025 Forester Premium and a 2022 Outback Wilderness. So I'm gonna keep this review as non-biased as I can, but honestly, there's a lot of reasons to love a Subaru. There's a lot of reasons why you might be comparing these two. They both sell in well over 100,000 units every single year, and that's in North America alone, while these are built and sold globally, at least in a few other markets anyways. They're both top safety pick pluses with a whole host of safety features, and there's a lot of people who do really well in accidents, but also these are well known to avoid accidents with all their active and passive safety features. They also have a lot of cargo capacity. They both have almost 9 inches of ground clearance, one of the best all-wheel drive systems in the market. And basically, there's a lot of reasons that we're gonna get into for why you might be considering either the 25 Forester or the 2025 Outback. And huge thanks to the Twin Falls Subaru for letting me borrow these. If you guys can't already tell, it's extremely windy out today, and it's getting really dusty where I'm at on this dirt lot. So I think I'm gonna move us over to a paved parking spot, and we're gonna continue with this review there. And if you guys like anything you see today, please consider liking this video, comment your thoughts and opinions below, and subscribe if you haven't already. With that said, let's dive right into this review. And before we get too far into this, I do want to apologize because I'm just filming it today on the dealer lot where I'm getting these from. Usually, or I would say probably 98% of my videos, I try to take whatever vehicles I borrow from people or from dealerships at least a few miles away from them to scenic remote locations to give you guys a little bit better background than just a car parking lot. But we're kind of stuck. We don't really have a lot of options today just because of the wind, because of the busyness, events around town, things like that. There's just no guarantee that another location will be that much more quiet, that much better. So huge thanks again to Twin Falls Subaru for letting me just stick on their lot today. There's a reason I do a lot of videos with them. It's because they sell everything below MSRP. They'll also ship anywhere in the country, and they're just one of the best dealerships that I've ever encountered to work with. But I don't work for them, I don't work for any dealerships, so this still is an independent review. Even though I'm an owner of one of each of these, there's a reason why I like Subaru, so let's start with the differences between these models. The next minute or two is really going to be just kind of a summary of the differences on these two vehicles and where each of them shine, and then the remainder of this video will really be going into diving into those differences. But the Outback, it's obviously longer than the Forester, so driving it on the road, and after having owned both of these, I do think it feels a little bit more stable of a vehicle. It's also a wagon, which is cool, and then it's lifted over the legacy that this started life as, so it's just kind of cool because there aren't very many off-road wagons. Ultimately though, the cargo capacity of this is very similar to the Forester, but it might be a little bit more usable because it's longer rather than taller, because if you stack stuff up too high, you're going to lose all the visibility that you have through the rear view mirror. But anyways, it also is offered with a turbo engine, which I think not only adds to the enjoyment of driving this vehicle, but also adds to the safety, being able to get out of your own way quite a bit faster, quite a bit distance than the other non-turbo versions, whether it's the non-turbo Outback or the non-turbo Forester, the only way it's currently sold, but we'll dive more into that later. And then it is a slightly nicer vehicle, and I know you guys might not like to hear that, some of you Forester owners, but even though this is the very end of this generation, and the Forester has just barely been refreshed, and I've driven all of them but the Touring at this point, I do think that the Outback is a slightly higher end vehicle, and I think that's by design by Subaru. But with that comes a slightly higher price tag, and I am talking trim for trim. For example, both of these today I have in front of you are premiums to keep it as consistent as I can. Meanwhile, the Forester, being about a foot shorter, is just that much more convenient to drive around town, to park in tight spots, even your garage. If you have a busy garage with a lot of junk in it, or if your garage is smaller, the Forester is just going to fit better overall. And then the windows are huge. Look how tall they are vertically. The Outback windows are not bad, but these are probably about the best of any four-door vehicle that I've ever driven. The hood, if anything, it looks like it slopes down even more, so you have really good forward-facing visibility, maybe a little bit more than the Outback. On camera, it actually looks pretty similar, but it feels like you have more in the Forester. Plus, spec for spec, you sit a little bit higher in the Forester. My Outback Wilderness, I do feel like that sits maybe about the same as our Forester, or maybe a little bit higher. It's all, you know, within an inch. So this just has a subtle, slight advantage, I would say. And in general, it is a tad bit cheaper, but it's kind of misleading because it's weird. This is a 2025. That's what the window sticker says. Yet Subaru has not updated their website yet. This is a 25, and Subaru has updated their website yet. So currently a base model of either of these starts about $30,000. At least that's what's assumed for the Outback. But once the new generation of Outback comes out in the next year or so, the price should jump up, maybe $2,600 like these ones did. So right now the base model of each of these is about the same, but in general the Outback does cost a few $1,000s more. But because this was already refreshed, if you choose to buy one of these, it's gonna feel fresh, it's gonna feel exciting for probably the next 6 years or so. Whereas the Outback, it still looks good. They've always kind of been an evolutionary redesign, never anything too revolutionary, which that sounds like what the next generation is gonna be. But right now, I think the Forester might actually look better, or a little bit more exciting because it's new. And the last thing to talk about before we get into the nerdy specs between these, all the numbers, and I show you the hatch and the back seat and the front seat and under the hood, is the only thing that I have done to modify our Subaru so far with my Outback and what the Forester is likely gonna have is window tint, because the front windows are not tinted, only the back, and the backs are usually in the mid 20% depending on make and model. There's some variance, but usually they're dark enough that you probably don't need to work on them, but if you really want to, you can. I'm always gonna have to recommend keep it legal, and disclaimer, everything you hear is just my opinion. But the front windows, with how big they are, and sitting inside here, how much light comes in, and through that huge hole in the roof, there's a lot of light. My eyes are a little bit sensitive, and so I like to have window tint. And I think that's something that some of you guys might want to consider. Very light, there's a lot of light coming in, which if your eyes are sensitive, you might not like that. Or if you want to avoid extra UV rays, if you want to have a little bit more privacy, or if you just want your vehicle to look better and have the front match the rear, you might want to consider window tint. And if you are considering window tint and you're anywhere near southern Idaho, I highly recommend you reach out to the tint lady for any of your residential or automobile needs. I've personally taken 5 vehicles to her now, and trust me, I've gone other places and I have not been satisfied with her work. It's fast, it's efficient, and it's affordable. Heck, if you even mention that you heard about her in one of my videos, she'll give you a discount. But anytime that I've come into town and I've visited her and waited in her waiting room, which is comfortable by the way, I don't think I've ever had to wait for more than maybe 30 or 35 minutes for her and her team to get the job done. And while you're waiting, you learn a lot. You can see the difference that the tint that's being applied makes. It's a very interactive, educational experience, and I have nothing but the highest regards to share. I've had no follow-up concerns, I've had no follow-up issues. So for that reason, I'm gonna link all of her information below, and check her out. She's worth your business. So since both of these are the Premium, and the Forester currently only comes with the 2.5-liter Boxster engine, that's the same engine you get for both of these, although the software is slightly retuned for these new Foresters. But overall, just take a glance of the Forester and then I'll move over to the Outback. Everything you see here basically is the exact same as the last generation, minus the engine cover, minus the fact that it no longer has the electronically controlled thermostat. It now has a mechanical system, which is more reliable. And then it also has a slightly better transmission out of the last generation Forester Wilderness. But we're gonna come over to the Outback and talk about this. This one makes 182 peak horse at about 5,800 RPM and 176 pound-feet of torque. And it's basically a proven engine at this point. They had some head gasket leaks 15 years ago, but since then, I never hear about engine failures on the forums, and I'm on the forums quite a bit. These are a bulletproof engine. They've done really well, and they're easy to work on. You have your fuse boxes on the periphery. You have your alternator, your AC compressor, all of your reservoirs and places to do basic maintenance items. And there's actually enough room to work on the periphery of this engine on both sides. The serpentine belt, for instance, it's right there. A lot of the maintenance on this is just too easy. Same thing for the Forester. There's still a lot of room. I can't tell which one might have more room to work on. The engine on this is pretty sunken down, but so is it on the Outback. And when you do go with an XT trim level of the Outback and you have the intercooler on top, it raises it up a little bit more, but honestly, there's a lot of room to work on either of these. The Forester was slightly retuned, so it loses 2 horsepower at redline, and it gains 2 pound-feet of torque down low, 700 RPM sooner. But overall, they actually feel very similar to drive. This new generation does feel a tiny bit more punchy around town, a tiny bit better, especially when you do have it in sport mode, which is basically just like a downshift. It's more higher RPM, it's more ready to rev it out a little bit, so it does feel slightly better. And the Forester weighs a few hundred pounds less, but does it feel noticeably better performing than a non-turbo Outback? Honestly, not really. And I've done 0 to 60 GPS testing on these literally like 50 times between Foresters and Outbacks probably. They're basically no faster than another. Maybe this is a few tenths faster on average, but it's not going to be that noticeable. It's only going to be shaving off a few feet from your 0 to 60 time, which the reason I think that the Turbo Outback and the Turbo should come to the Forester to make it safer is when you do a 0 to 60 run and you're in perfect conditions in my area, the Outback can do it in about 330 to 350 feet. The Forester takes closer to 500 feet. So imagine if you're pulling on or merging, onto the interstate and there's semi trucks and there's things in your way, or you're just at a T in the road and you need to pull onto the highway and cars are going 60 miles an hour. On average, a naturally aspirated Subaru takes about as good as 8.5 seconds or as bad as about 11 seconds unloaded to hit 0 to 60. And that's just with me testing it in the car at about a mile above sea level, not towing, not loaded down with your family and your friends and your loved ones are gonna slow you down a little bit more. That's just unloaded. These are not that fast. Whereas a turbo like my Turbo Outback, it does anywhere from a low 6 seconds 0 to 60 to a high 6 seconds 0 to 60, and shaving off 150 feet means that if you are pulling onto the highway and you're gonna have to get up to 60 and you miscalculate, or the people driving are going faster than you expect, you might be upsetting someone if it feels like you just pulled out in front of them and you can't get up to speed in time. If you're taking 3 seconds or longer just to get up to the speed limit, or an extra almost 200 feet. So although in accidents, they hold up about the same, they're both top safety picks, I do think a turbo option in the year 2025 is what you should consider. If you guys can wing it, if you guys can spend that extra money, which I do wish the turbo is offered on the base model, on the premium, and then on all configurations of the Forester, versus having to spend so much more money for a higher trim level altogether. But it's a safer vehicle if you can get out of its own way, and if you don't, potentially cause an accident or get in someone else's way. And that's just my thoughts on it. And even though this new generation of Forester is supposed to have the Forester Wilderness transmission and transmission cooler from the last generation, it still is only rated to tow 1,500 pounds if you have a receiver. Whereas the Outback with the same 2.5 liter boxer engine, for whatever reason, it's rated to tow 2,700 pounds. And then if you do get the Wilderness, at least the last generation Wilderness, they both have a more aggressive final drive ratio. A 444 on the Outback, a 411 on the Forester. Otherwise stock, they both have, I think it's a 370. I always confuse 370 and 390, but I think they're 370s. And you'll notice that this one also has the upgraded roof rails. And then for the new Foresters, like the Sport and some higher trim levels, you can get lowered roof rails to look a little bit more sporty. But honestly, it's a Subaru. I like the raised ones. Whereas this last year of the old Outback, it still has the weaker crossbars, and only the Wilderness gets the heavy-duty rails, which look very similar to the Forester rails. But when you open up the hatch, this one does not have the power liftgate optional package. Thankfully, the shocks do a good job, and you can see just how high above the roof line the hatch opens. So make sure when you park this in your garage, you have at least a couple feet before your garage door or anything else for the height and the length, so you don't hit anything. But back here, you have 29 cubic feet of room, up to 30. It just depends on if you have the subwoofer or not. Otherwise, you have 2 pockets on each periphery. You have a temporary spare tire down here with some extra storage space and all of your tools. That tray is to hold a battery. At least that's what I've been told on my comments, and thank you to those who have done the research to figure that out and to help me out with that. Otherwise, you have your scissor jack, your eye bolt hole, and then this one doesn't have the buttons to drop the seats, but honestly, I'm 5'11" and I could reach them and I could drop them that way. And when you drop them all, you have about 74 cubic feet of room, but I'm just gonna leave the back up for right now. And then this Outback Premium does have the power liftgate, so you can open it up, and let's see, it doesn't take too long to open, a little bit slower than you would by hand. And does it open a little bit? Yeah, actually it's about the same height as the other one, I would say, which the roof of the Outback is slightly lower, but overall I'd say the hatch is open about the same. And back here you have about 33 cubic feet of room, so you do have about 3 more cubic feet than you do on the Forester, and it's longer because remember, this vehicle's about a foot longer, so it's not as big and square of an opening, and it's more slanted back at the top, if you guys can see that, than I think the Forester is. But you do have a few more feet. This is just a massive opening, and especially on the Forester, you can get really close to it to where you can put stuff in. You don't have to lift weight and carry it away from you, because that's pretty bad for your spine. So good storage here, but even better storage here. And then you'll notice that you don't have to stack stuff up as high to get all of your 33 cubic feet. This one also has the handles to drop the seats, and when you drop them, you have slightly more room than the Forester, about 75 cubic feet. But otherwise, tons of safety features, child safety tethers, tie downs. Higher trim levels also have, this one has lighting, you have a handle too. You have a lot of stuff back here. And then unless you get the Onyx or you get the Wilderness, you don't get a full-size spare. These are all just temporary spare tires down here. but you should be able to fit a full-size spare because, heck, the Wilderness comes with a full-size spare. Before I forget, one of the reasons why I said that the Forester feels a little bit, just a little bit lower end than the Outback is the blind spot monitoring on these ones. When it goes off, if you turn your signal on and there's someone next to you in the other lane, it doesn't beep at you like it does on the Outback. And that's the same for this new generation. A bunch of you guys have actually been asking about that on the forums, and I've tried it out on ours, and yeah, it doesn't beep at you. And I can't find anything in the settings like that. But first of all, look at the back seat of the Outback. Door panel huge. The back seats on both of these vehicles is honestly pretty similar, but you have a handle versus just a little strap to pull it back on the Forester, which is still a carryover for the current one. You can recline the seats pretty well, but the back seat is huge on both of these vehicles. At 5'11", I have a ton of room in front of my knees. Probably a little bit more knee room though on the Forester, if we're being honest. But really, the back seats, there's not really a hands down winner here. They're both really nice. This is the strap I'm talking about. Those are some child safety latches too. It's already all the way forward. That's about how far it can recline. So when it's all the way forward, yeah, there's a little bit more knee room on the Forester than there is on the Outback, but they're both a really nice place to be. And if you're gonna open up the Outback, the door panel again looks very similar to the back. Both of these vehicles have the proximity key feature, so you can leave the key in your pocket. This is what the keys look like, but I actually already reviewed an Outback Premium. I haven't posted it publicly yet. It's just waiting privately or on my membership program for anyone who's interested in that. I'll post it soon. But I actually drove a Premium Outback that had the physical key, and it didn't have this because apparently this is an option. Let's look at the window sticker and see if we can find that. Optional package, yep, keyless access, push button start, $3,000. So surprisingly, the Premium didn't come standard with that. And I think that's surprising because I'm not sure that I've ever driven a Premium Outback that didn't have that before. So I'm not sure if that's new for this year or if I just have always had ones that have been loaded out with that option and maybe I just missed that. Anyways, these are all cloth seats being the Premium. Subaru cloth seats are comfortable, good bolstering. They're heated if you have that screen. It's not my favorite screen because so many things are connected to it, but it does the job. And sitting in here, visibility, not as big as the Foresters. Just look at those huge Forester windows. And it does look from sitting here like the Forester sitting up higher, but I promise in person it doesn't feel quite that different. It's just how these are configured. But good visibility. The hood still slopes down, but the Forester definitely wins for visibility. And this only has that little hole in the roof, whereas that has the bigger one as factory on everything but the base model. Otherwise, good options. You have the garage door openers, you have auto-dimming mirrors, you have the compass if we turn this on. Actually, let's fire it up. You have the basic heads-up display that just flashes lights at you to help you with your adaptive features. The horns on both of these are pretty similar. I think they came from the same Subaru parts bin. They're loud enough, they're deep enough. It sounds like a Subaru horn. And ventilation is good. This is a really comfortable vehicle to drive. I've driven my own Outback about 40,000 miles and it hasn't had a single legitimate problem yet. And then on the ice silver metallic Forester, you'll notice the same proximity key features. It's kind of slow to respond on Subarus, but it does the job. I usually just leave the keys in my pocket when I'm using my own Subaru to drive for the day. But door panel, it's nice. Cloth seats, a little bit nicer, lighter colored interior. And again, tons of light. Look at all that sunshine, UV rays, and heat coming down. And that's why I recommend potentially considering tinting this. You'll still have good visibility, but I don't know. I wear transition lenses. My eyes are sensitive. Maybe I'm the odd one out. But otherwise, when you sit in here, really good visibility. Hood slopes down like I was talking about. Giant windows. See, looking at the Outback from here, it feels like you see so much more of it down here than I did in the other vehicle. To be fair, I am closer to it than I was before looking over the passenger side, but you guys get the message. And yeah, the Outback looks taller from where I'm sitting here, so that really wasn't that the Forester is so much taller. The horn sounds decent. Actually, that's higher pitch than the Outback. I forgot about that. The Outback has a more masculine horn. The Forester has a higher pitched horn. Otherwise, same thing. It takes a while to turn off the screen. You can see the options here on this one. Oh, yeah, sorry, there's only 2 pages. For some reason, I was looking up here and expecting it to move it. What am I doing? X mode, stage 1. This doesn't have navigation, which should be just an extra widget right there. But overall, it does a good job. You can go through info on either of these, and you have basically the exact same information tools. It's still loaded out, the garage door openers, auto dimming mirrors, the compass. You can see right down the center, and it's a nice place to be. Tons of storage in the Forester. Let's turn this off. Anyways, guys, I think it's probably time we start wrapping this video up. It didn't seem to be as direct and to the point as I was hoping for. I feel like I rambled on quite a lot. So the last few things I want to mention are just things that I basically forgot to mention earlier. So both of these, the gas door is located on the passenger side. The Outback is an 18.5 gallon tank. The Forester is still a 16.6 gallon tank, and they both basically get the same MPG, assuming that they have the same wheel size. The Forester is like the Sport with the 19 inches versus the 17 inches that are on this Premium. It loses 1 MPG of highway, but otherwise it's 26 city, 32 or 33 on the highway. So your max road trip and range in the naturally aspirated Outback is almost 600. In the Forester, it's up to about 550. So just keep that in mind. That's a subtle difference. Otherwise, they're both about 5.5 feet tall, about 6 feet wide. The Outback is about 16 feet long. The Forester is about 15 feet long. The Outback, if it's naturally aspirated, weighs maybe 3,600 pounds. If it's turboed, maybe up to about 3,900 pounds, because that means it also has other fancy features. The Forester weighs about 3,600 pounds regardless, because they're all very similarly spec'd. And they are both fantastic vehicles, and there's a reason why my wife and I, we own one of each, because they're safe, they're reliable, they're good vehicles. And honestly, out of all the different manufacturers that I have owned brand new and all the warranty claims I've ever had to make, there's been very few with Subaru, but Subaru of America, their customer service line is seriously the best customer service that I have ever dealt with. And with that said, if you guys want to watch any other videos, I have videos where I've shown how to set the PIN code to get access with the proximity key on the back. I've shown the safety features being tested, which was kind of a sketchy video to make, actually having to have it automatically brake and hope that it works right. Things like that. There's a lot of other videos, a lot of individual reviews, and a lot of stuff that I have tucked away that I'm going to make public over the next couple months. And with that said, if you guys like anything you saw today, please consider liking this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to watch more stuff like this, and comment your thoughts and opinions below. And what other comparisons do you want to see? Do you guys mind that they were like that this video today was on the dealership lot, or do you hate that? Do you want me to go somewhere remote, somewhere far, far away? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, there's a ton of other Subarus around here. There's other vehicles I could grab two for the day and to bring them and compare them. But it does take a lot of work to do a 2-vehicle video. So with that said, maybe consider liking if you found this helpful or you appreciate the work that goes into it. But otherwise, you do you, and I'm grateful that you're still listening. With that said, take care, guys. See ya.